Good afternoon, everyone. We will start the second half of the day. Uh, we have Professor Gopalan Jagdish from the Indian Institute of Science, and it's my privilege to introduce him. Professor Jagdish obtained his bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering with distinction from Bangalore University in 1989, Master of Engineering from Birla Institute of Technology, Ranchi in 1992, and PhD in Aerospace Engineering from the Indian Institute of Science in 1998. He currently works as a professor in the Department of Aerospace Engineering, IISc, and has taken over as the chairman of Center of Excellence in High-Speed Aerodynamics at the IISc. He works in the areas of hypersonic aerothermodynamics, and shockwave propagation in complex fluids. He has over 175 publications in peer-reviewed international journals and conferences and edited 3 books. He has 8 international patents on various discoveries on industrial applications of shock waves. He has been bestowed with several international, national, and state awards for his contributions to aerospace science and technology. Apart from that, he is a fellow of the Royal Aero Society of UK, National Academy of Engineering India, and associate fellow of the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics. He has widely traveled all over the world and delivered several invited talks in prestigious universities abroad. He has also chaired several technical sessions in many international symposiums. Finally, I'm also happy that someone who's as young as me is here. Welcome, Professor Jagdish, and over to you.
Thank you very much. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's a huge challenge, right, to talk first immediately after a good lunch. And this happens to be my 3rd talk, which I am giving immediately after lunch in the last 10 days. Whenever I begin to talk immediately after lunch, I am reminded of an incident. It appears the teacher entered the classroom and he asked a question: who is the greatest of the two, mother or the teacher? The student immediately stood up and without battling an eyelid, he said, sir, it is teacher. Obviously, teachers always like to get compliments from students, so teacher was very elated and asked, why do you say that? And the student said, sir, a mother sings a lullaby, tells a story for 40 minutes to put one child to sleep. You just speak for 5 minutes and you put all the 40 of us to sleep. Now, the reason why I keep saying this is, I should not make an attempt to put you to sleep, but then certainly I would like to share some of my own experiences here. And looking at the community, and at least after such an inspiring talk by Professor Lakshmi Narayana, I happen to be a minority here in the sense that I am a hardcore experimentalist, and I am proud of that. But I have a holistic and healthy respect to every bit of the simulation tool that we can find around. And the message that I want you or anybody who is here to carry home is, at the end of the day, you will have to solve a problem. And it doesn't matter whether you do it on the computer or whether you do it on the shop floor, but please don't lose track of reality. It's very important for you. It's because, just to catch on to the example that Sudhakar was quoting, in a very scientist senior level interview recently, I just asked, what do you think is stress? And this is from a practicing engineer. It's not an overstatement. And he did ask me, sir, you are talking about the stress in the node or in the element? That is very disturbing to me. Now, while I do advocate the usage of all the tools among engineering curriculum, I would like still the engineering curriculum to be strong on fundamentals. And what I will try to show you here is, life at the end of the day, in another 10 years, this is again my own personal thought, there will be no distinction between disciplines. Absolutely no distinction between disciplines. Because to me, science is all about asking the question why. Science is all about asking the question why. Engineering is all about asking the question why not. And in a case of a good technology, you don't ask any questions. I never ask a question how my mobile phone works today simply because it works. That's a fantastic technology. But then you can never go and build a good technology if your fundamental science is weak. So you will have to go through this arduous task of synergizing, harmonizing in a very holistic manner fundamental science, engineering, and technology. And I'll show you this inevitable synergy between modeling and experiment and simulation, how it has actually helped us to innovate. You will never be able to innovate if you did not understand what is it doing, why is it happening, and if you don't go through the real arduous path of finding answers to your question why. During the presentation, you will see some simple examples, because I would like to finish in about 30 minutes time. And then maybe I will also conclude by giving you some of the current examples of how your entire curriculum, everything you can change, but then please change your mindset. And that mindset change can take place only because if you believe that there is no real distinction between basic science and engineering. Let's move on. See, at the end of the day, if you go and ask a common man, or if you want to sell even Amrutanjan to a street in India, they don't care. Does it solve, does it reduce his pain is what he is going to ask you. So in a real world, at the end of the day, I need a solution. I don't care how you really obtained that solution. And that solution has to be good enough for that individual who is actually craving for a solution. And you will never be able to sell anything. And knowledge at the end of the day is money today, right? All of us do believe here, knowledge is money. There is no question of saying that I know 101 things and I have published 200 papers, but then what have you made out of that? It's a very important question. So to me, experiments, modeling, or simulation, all of them are simply tools, nothing more than a tool. And if you want to use any of these tools and arrive at a solution, the only way you can do that is looking for the right questions and not the right answers. This is very important. I need to ask the right question. If I don't ask the right question, there is no way that I will find a right solution. Stop me if you feel bored at any point of time. Before I really get into some of the classical examples, I'll just give you a brief outline of what we do in Indian Institute of Science. While I tell you this, you will also realize how these are all intertwined with our day-to-day activity. I work in an area called shockwave research. Shockwave is certainly, I think even the previous presenter was using that word in case of blade tip cooling. And I am sure most of you may be aware of what these shock waves are. Definitely we all get shocks in our lifetime. When our girlfriend says, no, you have a shock. When I see my results on the notice board, I get a shock. When I put my finger on a electrical socket, I get a shock, but that is not the shock I'm referring to here. I am referring to a very interesting wave phenomena, which is so omnipresent. Even when you fire a cracker, then you hear a sound. When I am speaking, certainly you are able to hear it, and the invisible sound waves are traveling at about 330 meters per second. It is so fast, and this distance is hardly few meters. So within few milliseconds, the waves are able to reach you, and you have receptors which are able to catch up with that. But in nature, these kind of wave phenomena occurs in varieties of scenarios, starting from a supersonic aircraft. In fact, this is a very, very interesting photograph which one of my friends from NASA, Langley, captured. This is a T-38 bomber which is flying at about Mach 2.2, and you can actually see the shock waves traveling there. And you have that wonderful envelope, and in essence, for those of you who are not from the aerospace engineering, shock waves are such interesting phenomena that if they travel through your entire body, you would not even know what is happening. In fact, in our laboratory, if you expose a shock wave to an apple, then outside the apple would look completely intact, but I can put a straw and drink the juice. We are now trying to build a small technology so that the housewife would be able to drink juice from apple rather than putting it in the mixie. In some sense, it is just a pressure pulse. Now it becomes a blast wave when you have an exponential decay, and then it just becomes a shock wave if you're able to control these things. And in Japan, for example, they control or they turn off the electric power on all their bullet train in about 20 seconds flat by picking up the precursor shock waves from all their earthquake. It's a very interesting thing which you find. In fact, if you move forward, this is a classical sonic boom picture which most of you would have seen captured by the US Navy. This is another one. When you fire, you will find another shock. This in fact was what was reported in Nature about a couple of months ago. By monitoring the shock coming out from a dying star, you can actually predict what is the energy back. In essence, it's simply imagine that it's a furnace. The moment I switch on the button, I can get both pressure and temperature spikes within few microseconds, and I can control the amplitude of this without any difficulty. Now, we do varieties of things in the laboratory for shockwave research in IISc. When we began, we were only looking at high temperature physics, which is nothing but hypersonic. But today, naturally, over the last decade, we have grown into varieties of area. Today, we have about 4 faculty from aerospace in this laboratory. We have 17 faculty cutting across the disciplines in IISc. We have about 30 students who work in the lab. And we perhaps, although it's not good to make tall claims, we are the largest classical engineering group who believe experiments, simulation, modeling should coexist. Please don't lose track of nuts and bolts. Even the rocket also needs nut and bolt or a rivet at the end of the day to hold things together. We are actually moving ahead in a lot of areas, starting from tsunami. In fact, we are also doing some interesting work on modeling internet traffic and stock market collapse using the nonlinear dynamics that is associated with the shock propagation. A lot of things happen. And this is the view of our laboratory, which is like resembles a big hangar. So it's an open laboratory. We don't have any walls. And whatever equipment that you see here, they were all built in this country. So again, we are very proud that Bangalore has got a fantastic manufacturing hub. Many of them were built using CNC machine. Many of them were designed in the laboratory. So we make students design even now. And of course, we do optimize and things like that. Then we are asking some very, very fundamental question. Here again, I would like to again emphasize that it's important for you to ask the right question, whether you're working in an industry or whether you work in an academia. And finding answers to that question should fetch you money, whether you are there or whether you are here. Although in academics, you tend to be in the cushions of comfort zone. We are looking at chemical kinetics of scramjet fuel. For example, we are looking at the mysteries of hypersonic aerothermodynamics. Still, I don't have a commercial code which can solve all the real gas effects there. So these are all areas where there are some things which are missing. So we are trying to learn that. For example, this is one very important question that we are trying to ask. What happens when a single mammalian cell, if it impacts with shock? Some of the soldiers who are returning from the war field today, by just being in the battlefield for about 10 days, their arteries are shrinking by 50%. Why? All our research or any exercise that you see begins with that question, why? And again, I would like to say that why is science. Moving ahead, we also have a vision. While we want to do advanced science, which would help ultimately, maybe we did quite a lot of work for the space recovery experimental module. We are looking at putting a man in space. We are trying to look at hypersonic cruise missiles. We are trying to look at a re-entry, reusable space launchers, all kinds of advanced stuff. We also want to do something for the common man. If my science does not reach the man who is walking on the street, believe me, friends, there may be a day where people will pelt scientists in this country. Scientists are the one who have actually belittled our own science. We have to reach out. A technology, if it doesn't reach the common man, no matter how much money you make, nobody will care about your company 2 years down the line or 10 years down the line. Yes, we want to build a needleless drug delivery system, again using shock waves. We also want, I won't show you too much about this. We have built a technology now where you can put preservatives into bamboos, again using shock waves. So the common link is shock and hypersonic. And you will realize, you can ask the right question, how the tools will help you to take you into different routes so that I can build some houses in the rural area. These are all some of the major research themes that we are trying to do in our laboratory. I won't highlight many of them. And some of them are going to be of use to many of you. And all of them involve heavy usage of commercial tools. This is the message that I want to tell you. We do use LS-DYNA to ANSYS to CFD softwares, and we also write our own codes. Hypersonic, in some sense, if you ask a question, it's an area where Mach number becomes beyond the speed of sound, at least 4 and 5 and above. But more than that, what really happens is air does not remain air. There is a massive amount of dissociation. The moment there is a plasma and dissociation, obviously your conventional theories break down. There are situations where continuum breaks down, so you may have to do rarefied gas dynamics, especially at the back of a space shuttle. Even today, when the space shuttle re-enters the atmosphere for about 20 seconds, you lose track of that because of the classical communication blockout. So a lot of things need to be understood other than figuring out where does the shock lie. Because if I know the distance between the body and the shock, I can design the thermal protection system. These materials have to withstand temperatures which are beyond 2,500 to 3,000 degree Kelvin. So a lot of exciting stuff happen in this area. We have varieties of facility to recreate these things in the laboratory. And these are all called shock tunnels. In fact, 20 years ago when the CFD came into the market, they said all the experimental aerodynamicists will lose the job. It has not happened. We are still in business. Dreamliner will not fly without the wind tunnel testing. It is important. But then they have also used all the tools very judiciously. So please have a healthy respect to every branch of problem solving. This is the message that I want you to, don't be afraid to soil your hands when it is required. Don't be afraid to use the feather touch keyboard when it is necessary. These two are very much essential. Now we use these kind of facility to recreate all the experiments in the lab. We have built varieties of sensors. Except for the high-speed camera, we don't import anything. We also build our own nano-based sensors and micro-MEM sensors in the Indian Institute of Science. Every student grows the platinum thin film sensors which all respond for about within 1 microsecond. Because my experimental simulation time scale is 1 millisecond. So within that, it's also comparable to the time scale of your CFD. So usually even our transient analysis in CFD is for 1 millisecond. Experiment is also for 1 millisecond. These are all some of the, if you have a space shuttle and then you would like to see how the flow looks like, then the flow, if you want to visualize, then you can see a very nice shock wave which comes over there. In fact, I'm very proud of this figure. Many years ago when we did not have money, we did this. Mainly because Dr. Kalam, when the Agni project was being tested about 15 years ago, he walked in and said, please show me a shock wave. I will believe that it is possible for you to do experiments within 1 millisecond. And when we did not have money, we just borrowed a needle and then struck an electric discharge, borrowed a camera, and then you can actually see the shock. If you know the shock standoff distance, you have wonderful correlations by which I can design the thermal protection system. But today we do spend about close to I think it's about 50 lakh rupees, but I can see a lot of interesting thing that happens even in subsequent areas. In fact, this is a very interesting facility which we have built. I thought that I will show you this. Lot of modeling has gone in. In fact, only 5 countries have this facility where you have a piston which generates very high pressure and then I expand it through a nozzle and then I can create the condition that a vehicle will experience during Martian re-entry. 7 kilometers per second, 8 kilometers per second. And there's a wonderful piece of machine which is close to about 100 tons of steel. We all use SS306 here. And it's a very complex mission, and I'm happy that about 5 nations, they do have the capability to build this because nobody will give you these things. They can give you the second version of a digital camera as a washing machine, but they will never sell you any of these things. It's better with due apologies to people who are there from other countries here. Now, if you have a velocity which is actually very small of the order of about 2 kilometers per second, you will have a shock like this. But the moment the temperature or the velocity increases, you will find that the flow over the body will be so illuminating that I think you will see it in a minute. The whole thing will be plasma, similar to the condition experienced by the Kalpana Chawla accident. This is something which we have captured in our own laboratory so that you can test out material, you can design materials and things like that. In fact, the reason why Kalpana Chawla's accident took place, they believe that one of the ceramic bricks had loosened, and as a result, the local temperature inside the capsule became almost close to 600 degrees centigrade within a very short time. Well, that is about some other aspect. I'll quickly get on to the other one. I won't talk too much about it. We have, in fact, working with an industry to develop a new technology which would save energy, and they make pencils. So it's not that we are only looking at very high-end stuff. This, in fact, is the pencils which have been made in that company where the wood was treated using shock waves. 50% of our funding comes from private industry, so we are very much aware of what it calls for in the outside world. And I'll quickly take you through this one cycle. To me, this is a very important slide, mainly because the boundaries between disciplines are diminishing at a rate which none of you are able to realize. This is much more profound to me than something else. Especially in the engineering curriculum, they think physics, chemistry, mathematics, biology is not required. Unfortunately, I see that as a much greater need for them to strengthen that, because without science, we'll never be able to make any progress. Because the basic science of the problem is the one which actually drives you in the correct direction. And experiments, of course, are necessary if you want to understand some aspects of problem. But if the problem is very well understood, you have already the tools, then please don't reinvent the wheel. It is useless to reinvent the wheel. If you have some good tool, please use them. Maybe theoretical modeling of the problem is very essential. I would urge you to go and do a control volume analysis of a problem. It is still a very, very powerful tool to me. It doesn't really need any big programming skills. Please think, please use your brain. While there was some discussion on what would happen in learning tables, some of the recent research has shown in another 50 years, the left part of the brain may remain virtually unused if the current trend continues, because people don't utilize their memory. So it's very important for us not to really become, prisoners in our own tools. Arriving at some quantitative and qualitative analysis or a governing equation or a parameter is very important. I'm sorry to say that most of the engineering students are the people who solve the solutions today, they are solving it blindly. That is the reason why we are not able to make any innovative contribution either in product development or in a process. Maybe we will have to solve these equations theoretically, figure out before you go in for an experiment. Maybe you may have to develop a prototype. But then whenever we do this, our ultimate aim is we should have fire in our belly to sell this product throughout the world. And I fully agree that we should have at least one product which we can say made in India. But that is possible only when there is a harmonious mix between science, engineering and technology. I'll just quickly take you through some few examples which we have done, which will tell you how simulation tools and experiments can go in hand. For example, we have looked at a new accelerometer balance which can be used to measure the aerodynamic drag over bodies in shock tunnels. And we have used FEM exhaustively in conjunction with CFD to design the balance itself. We have also looked at some model simulation, and I'll also end at the later part of the presentation, how you can actually come up with a shockwave assisted drug delivery device using your fundamental approach of understanding science, engineering and technology. See, this is probably the smallest balance that anybody has built in the world in terms of trying to measure, because most of our model sizes are very small like this. And I am interested in measuring all the three components. And what we do is we very finely put a rubber bush there and allow the model to freely vibrate during the 1 millisecond runtime. But after about few seconds, the rubber will start bending and it will not allow a unrestrained movement to the model during the tunnel testing. All that I am trying to do is when the model is freely floating, measure the acceleration. I know the mass, I can get the forces from Newton's second law. But then it's not so easy as we say. I need to design the right kind of rubber. I need to figure out where the accelerometer can be located. Where does the CG lie? Where does the CP lie? All kinds of things. This is where if you are very good at fundamentals, you can use the tool. FEM is a fantastic tool which you can use it. We in fact did a lot of analysis here to figure out what kind of accelerometers you have to use to really get some signal in within 1 millisecond. We in fact ran the complete CFD simulation, arrived at the pressure distribution, fed that into the FEM model, then clearly identified what kind of acceleration histories you get and what kind of material you can use, because the stress waves are going to travel through the material. Is brass better? Is aluminum better? How do I reduce the weight? All these permutation combinations you can work out if you know how to use tools. This is another classical example of how you can really measure acceleration without much difficulty. In fact, in shock tunnels, you will have to design models. And believe me, tunnel testing is not very easy. Experiments are expensive. How do you minimize the experiments? Please use the tools. They are all available. Many of them, the physics is known. For example, if I put a bar like this in internal testing, does this obstruct my flow? Does it alter the aerodynamics? You can ask that question and do a complete Navier-Stokes analysis.